Hello, everyone. This is Scott Bissell from the Center for Faculty Excellence, and welcome to today's webinar. This is one of the sessions that we offered at the recent faculty meeting, and we wanted to bring it to you all for those of you who weren't able to attend the session in person. This session is Research Agenda, Getting Focused for Results. And our presenter today is a contributing faculty member in the College of Management and Technology, Richard Schuttler, and I will turn things over to him in just a moment after we do a quick overview of how to use GoToWebinar in case this is your first time attending. On the screen, you should be seeing the full control panel that I'm showing on the left side. If you're not, and for some reason it's in collapsed view, all you have to do is just click the arrow that I have boxed in red here. And once you do that, the full control panel will return back to you. There may be times when you want to toggle back and forth between this view and the minimized view we were just looking at, in case there's text on the screen that's blocking the control panel, and you want to do that. If you've not already done so, you want to just make sure your audio is working for the session for both your microphone and your speakers. Just click the audio setup link and you'll be able to run a quick test to make sure everything's working with GoToWebinar. When you're running the test, don't worry about the sound coming through to our classroom, as it will not do so, and we won't be hearing any of the testing that you're doing. I have put everyone's microphone on mute just to cut down on any background noise, so that way you can hear our presenter clearly. We do want to get your participation. We want to get your questions and thoughts throughout the entire presentation, so there's a couple ways that you can do that. The first way is via text, so just send your question in via text in the area that I'm showing on the screen and send that to us, and we will go through that at the next available time in the webinar. The other way you can participate is to click the raise hand button, and when we pause for questions or thoughts, we'll go ahead and call on you and unmute your microphone so that you can share your thoughts out loud. We also have closed captioning available, and I'll be putting the link in the questions area in just a moment. So if you want to take in the webinar that way, you can do so. Also, at the end of the webinar, we will have an evaluation link in the questions area to get your feedback on today's session, and also for you to identify any other professional development needs you have in your role at the university. So that's just a quick introduction of how to use the GoToWebinar platform. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and turn things over to our presenter today, Dr. Richard Schuttler, who is, as I mentioned, from the College of Management and Technology. So Rich, whenever you're ready, just go ahead and share your screen, and looks like we can see it.
Okay, great, Scott. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, for taking some time out of your schedule today to spend with Scott and myself as we go through a presentation that I did in the winter session in Miami several months ago when we were there for graduation. This presentation today is going to be a little bit different from what I did there, in that the presentation there allowed a certain amount of time for us to be able to spend in a working session. But I'll go through all the information here today, and I am happy to work with any of you after the presentation if you feel like you want to continue on with what we're talking about here today. I am very open for sending what you have to me on email and or getting on Skype with you at any time if it will be of service to you to help you to get published. So what I want to do is go through the slides here and share information with you. Scott is paying attention here on the side, so if you have questions, please ask them, and we'll have plenty of time. As I said, in the session, it was an hour, and we used about 20 or 30 minutes for actual work time. We'll reduce that, so this webinar will be much less than an hour. So the agenda, what to expect during this session. Of course, a little bit of an introduction, planning and achieving your goals, interactive exercise, which I'll walk you through, but we won't actually spend the time doing. How-to strategies, Walden's Research Center, and some implications and conclusions of the training. One of the things I have found through my journey of publishing, and my publishing experience, I don't know if I'd call it extensive, but it's been regular. I tend to have a number of projects that I'm constantly working on that evolve over time, so that at least every year I'm publishing something. Now, I do not know exactly what everybody's belief is about publishing. Sometimes those of us who work in the non-traditional universities may think that you don't need to publish as compared to those in the traditional universities. But through my experience, what I'm finding, having been in higher education both as an administrator at another organization as well as just being a faculty for 20-some years now, is that more non-traditional universities are starting to move in many ways to the traditional views, even with accreditation. So while you may not have been required to publish in the past, I think you're going to find that that's changing. Now, this could be a personal belief or understanding, or at least an assumption, but as I see other organizations changing and evolving through accreditation work and the people I talk to in the circles that I travel in, more and more people are expected to publish, even if they're a part-time contributing faculty member, as I am with Walden right now. So what does that mean? What's the implications on that? Well, I would think in many ways, for those of you who are teaching and facilitating, particularly if you're doing it at the doctoral level, it's about that leadership example, setting the example, and perhaps having your own dissertation done is one thing. Doing other research and other publishing is yet something else and completely different. I have certainly found through my publishing experience that everything I've learned along the way, whether it be a journal, whether it be a popular article, whether it be a book, whether it be online publishing, it has made me a better researcher, it's made me a better instructor, it's made me a better facilitator of not only content, but also of mentoring and sharing doctoral dissertations, because the broad experience that you get from the many different publications, and sometimes you might call it the pain of publishing, which I refer to from time to time, it is yet another opportunity to learn and take that and put it into practice in the future. Now, a research agenda, you may have heard the term before. Some people use it for many different things. I consider it to be nothing more than a plan of action. And much like an organization who comes up with an annual strategic plan for looking at their short and long-term goals, I would encourage you, if you have an interest in publishing, is to literally move the dream of publishing and putting it to paper and start to become a reality. And I have found by doing this, much like in any other aspect of the work that I do as a consultant or a mentor with executives, is that when we put things on paper, we put deadline dates to it, it's far easier to stick with that and to make progress. So I'll share with you a little bit more about the things where I've published in the research agenda, because there are common themes here of what we're going to speak about today. So it goes back to the simple phrase of plan your work, then work your plan, or if you want to say it, failing the plan is planning to fail. These simple terms are pretty powerful, and I believe in what I call incremental gains. Incremental gains are things that happen over short periods of time that collectively add up to be huge successes. You can see that in your everyday life, maybe in your own education path, where you did one assignment, you did one course, and they collectively add up to a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a doctorate degree. You could see it probably in your children's lives as they grow from newborn to however old they may be, or any other aspect of life where those who achieve success have some sort of plan. There's no secret that the majority of the people who are successful, that 8% of the people who control 92% of the wealth in the world, are basically people who have mastered the mundane of incremental gains, and they constantly plan their work. In my reading, I constantly read in my own efforts to continue to grow philosophies or biographies of people who are successful. And some of the trends that I've been able to put together are pretty simple, and one of them is that they just have the ability to plan their success instead of waiting for it to haphazardly happen. And the research agenda is no different. If you decide that you want to publish a book, a journal, if you want to do something online in a less peer-reviewed fashion, it's just a matter of putting that plan together, and that's pretty much what we're going to talk about today, is how you can take and create yourself a plan that you can look at on a regular basis, change it as things change in your environment, in your world, and stay focused towards getting published in something that you're passionate about. So, why are you publishing? Are you publishing only for your academic credentials? If so, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. Are you looking at publishing to share your knowledge and your lived experiences with others. I applaud people who do that. There's a big need for more things to be published. I mean, it's evident, and we can see just in the most recent past that there's still, regardless of what's going on in the world, a need for better leaders. I'm a firm believer that the way we treat, teach, educate, train people how to lead is flawed. It has to be. It's not working collectively in a holistic way. So there's always a need for us to take our skills and our experience and put it out there. Now, that doesn't mean we have to save the world or try to with our publishing, but we might be able to influence our own community. I have no doubt if you're on the line here listening to this, or those who attended this session, that there is an opportunity for us with our education levels to really look at things differently and say, you know what, I can impact social change. Walden's main philosophy of trying to do something with social change is growing. And it doesn't mean it has to be on a national or world level. It could be right in our own communities, in our own schools, our own families, to make things just a little bit different. I'm sure many of you are doing those things already, but let's see how we can expand that out and extend our views. As you plan your goals, I always ask people, and I do help people publish, and you'll find in my publishing I do a lot of co-authoring work. Either I bring people and co-author work with me, or I help them, because I believe collaboration is a great way to go, and I'll explain more about that. But when you're looking at a topic, do you already know your topic? If so, that's great. I tend to do most of my work around leadership, helping people to be better leaders, if you will. I actually don't even really use the word leadership at all, but it's about helping people to lead better and differently than they have before. And communications, because I'm a firm believer if we can use both leadership of the aspect of helping people to lead and communicate better, then we build more respect and more trust. And then we get people that are willing to talk with each other, and we can solve perhaps the complex problems of tomorrow and of today. So if you know a topic, that's great. If not, what areas of concern do you want to address? Are you looking at something that you have a passion for? I would encourage you to find out, what your passions are if you're not certain what you want to write about. Because when we, much like perhaps we talk about with people doing dissertations, if we can find something that you're passionate about, something you want to write about, excuse me, then you'll be more apt to stick with it and get it done. Some people look at current and historical trends. I looked at the need, if you will, to have better leaders out there that could do things differently and not, if you want to fall prey to the Peter principle, or people who ruin their careers and their family lives. I mean, we don't teach and educate people that way, but yet it happens. And I'm a firm believer from my experience, it happens with the most educated people, because they tend to be the ones that have the higher positions of authority and responsibility. So when we see these mistakes on TV and in the news, it's no doubt that they have large scopes of responsibility and accountability. Otherwise, they wouldn't make the headline news. So if it is something that you want to do research on, you don't have to do research and publish in a manner that's research-based. It could be something that's opinion-based, could be something that's experience-based, but at the same token, research-based, different types of articles for peer-reviewed journals are far more interesting or needed in some cases than pure experience articles. But there's a need for both. Do you want to write a popular book? Do you want to write an article? Do you want to do a peer-reviewed journal article? What is it that you want for your goal? As you go through, this session with me, and maybe as you ponder over the next couple days, if you decide you want to look to publish, is what kind of publication do you want? And sometimes it's easier to start out with something that's easier to do, gain some experience, and move on. Sometimes it's better if you're working in collaboration, something you're already involved with. It could be a research-based article, or it could be a book that you're just interested about. And I believe that books are books. It doesn't have to be a book that's a textbook. If you happen to have a book of short stories, if you're creative and innovative and you're a painter and an artist and you want to put a book together of your collection, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a publication. Some of you may want to do what's known more common now as the e-book, that could be 27 pages and put available on the internet for free, or sell it for $7 a piece and send it out to the internet and get 1 million people to buy it. So there's a lot of different options with goals. So what to publish, and I guess this is where I just kind of, I'm not trying to impress you with any of this, but maybe just share the things that I've been published with in the last 10 years that's collectively add up. Again, these incremental gains. I published in magazines and journals first. I started doing social media. Recently, I applied and received funded grants. Funded grants is a great way to go if you want to make money doing your publishing. It can support your lifestyle depending on what you want to do. But books. I wrote my first book because I came up with an idea called The Laws of Communication, where I started to look at how people communicate with one another in the workplace, and how supervisors, the manner in which they do communicate, influences or correlates to employee performance. I created a couple models off that, and then I created a chapter. It showed and explained my models, which I call Laws of Communication number 1 and number 2. And then I took my chapter and I sent it to a lot of my colleagues around the world and asked them if they would contribute basically 20 pages of content that suggests how my ideas or my models, the laws, were manifested in their industries, in their work. And I was able to get, as you can see here, or maybe you can't see it, but 21 supplemental authors who gave me chapters to be able to create this book. And then I created a second chapter of the most common elements of those 21 supplements. And then I create a final chapter that suggests what organizational leaders can do today without paying high-level consultants, and how to make things better. And that put together a book. Now, I certainly didn't save the world. It's not rocket science, but yet it's something that's helped a lot of people. And from this has spun off a best-selling book in the United States and in Europe. It's also spun off a survey called the Supervisor Leadership Communication Inventory, which is about 72 questions, which has been used in many doctoral dissertations at different universities. It's also been used with my clients. It's also been used to get a grant. So sometimes by publishing your own ideas, your own models, like many of the theories we have read about and learned about in our own education, you become the creator of your own model. And I'm an encourager of that. My other book, Everyday Leader Heroes, which literally just came out in the last 2 weeks and became available on Amazon.com, is another collection of, now this is a little bit more research-based in the sense that for over a year and a half, almost 2 years, as I traveled around the world in my consulting and public speaking work, I asked people 3 questions. Who has been a leader to them? What is that person's name? And what are 3 characteristics of that person that they could have picked amongst anybody in the world? So here's an example. You might want to take a minute here and just, and follow along with me, because you'll see that these things can be easy. So who in your life has set a great example to you as a leader? Now, somebody you have literally known, not somebody that's perhaps was a famous president or a public figure that you'd never met, and they never met you. They have no clue who you are. But maybe it's somebody like it's a school teacher, a coach, a sibling, a parent, a grandparent, a best friend. And so there you would be able to identify who that person is to you and their name, and then what are the 3 characteristics that make that person stick out amongst everybody else in the world that you could have picked. Were they a great listener? Were they humble? Were they perhaps a good teacher, have a positive attitude? Were they the type of person who always told you the truth no matter what? What I did is, from those same questions and asking literally thousands of people over almost a 2-year period, I collected all those characteristics and I wrote them down, or when I was in groups, I had them typed up, and then I put them together, and after a certain point, then I did an analysis and found out which ones were the most common of everyday leader heroes, and the top 10 is what's in this book. Now, what I did is I wrote the first chapter. I also wrote a chapter about teachers, because many people indicated teachers, and I wanted to write that chapter. But the other chapters, I went out to people who I believed were experts and people I trusted. So when I asked somebody to write about humble, I went to the most humble person I know in my world and asked that person to write a chapter. Much like the other book, all these contributing authors or supplemental authors offer their content for free. So you can see it's easy to publish with other people's help. Some of the other books you'll see I was co-author, I helped other people, or even The Refractive Thinker, which is more or less an anthology of doctoral dissertations put out by Dr. Cheryl Lentz. This is an award-winning series. I provided a foreword for that. Online, I also do what's known as Pro Progress Academy, Professional Progress Academy, where I've started an online membership site to help provide content in personal and professional development for people in poverty and people who do not have the ability to pay for higher education, perhaps like we were able to do. So there's a lot of venues you can publish in. The question is, what do you want to publish in? I'd encourage you, if you've published in certain areas already, great. What's next? What can you do to take your area to the next level? For those of you who do have books, I would encourage you, can you create a survey off it? Because if you can create a survey off it, you can test that survey for validity and reliability, start using it in your own research, and perhaps others will use it as well. And that just leads on to more and more different types of research. So, target your objective. What is your objective for your dissertation work, to maybe take it to another level, or to build upon it, or yet to go into some other area? Get organized for success. And so what does that mean, to get organized? I'm a firm believer that once you decide what you want to do, then you start to look at what you have to have done to get it done. And whether if you're publishing in a book, or whether you are going to publish a whole book yourself, or they're going to do a journal, every aspect has something different. Even journals, from one journal to the next, you'd have to go online and see what the requirements are for submissions, when they can be submitted. And that's another part of it. When you find out what you want to write about, you have to find the right location. And for example, in this year, I wanted to be published in a journal article as a lead author. But to do that, I literally had to write my article last year and submit it in December for a publication that's literally coming out in the next week or so. And so you might want to look and say, well, if you want to publish by a certain date, you have to find out when the deadline date is, and then kind of back it off a little bit by identifying your goals and be able to build your research agenda in a manner that's going to allow you to get your publication done for the purpose that you're trying to serve. If you're writing a book, you may not have a deadline date for your book other than something you self-impose upon yourself, like you may say, by the end of this year, you want to have a manuscript written so that you can send it to an editor or have it go to a number of publishers or to a self-publishing company and get it to the next step. Planning and achieving your published goals, again, it's looking at the dates, short-term, long-term goals. Do you want to do an article? Do you want to do a book? I tend to want to do published in an article every other year. And I've had as a general goal to publish a book, or either as a main author or co-author, one every 3 years. For me, that works. It may not be what you want to do. I get that. But you need to be able to at least decide what you want to do. If you're going to have a research agenda is something that's more than one item, preferably, that builds you either a new part of expertise for your career, extends your knowledge base to other people who can benefit from it. If you just want to do one article every 3 years, well, you know what? That's fine. Then you create it as such and you start to work on it, because pretty much, even if you're going to do one every 3 years, pretty much about the time you finish one, you're probably going to need to start on the other one because of the lead time that it could possibly take to publish. Some of the initiatives are the actual steps to achieve your goals. What are the actual steps you have to do? For me, if I was going to do the book, I had to come up with the ideas, the concepts. I usually wrote in the first 2 books I wrote the first chapters. Then I had to allow myself enough time to send it out to other people. I had to have enough time to get it back, give them deadline dates. And believe me, any of you, much like our own dissertations, for those who have done them, nothing ever goes as planned. And the timelines tend to go longer. My first book, I had originally thought it would have been published a year earlier, and the book that just literally came out, I had expected that to be published in November, in time for everybody to buy 2 copies for all their friends, copies for Christmas. That didn't work out. But that's just a reality of having a deadline and a time frame that is just a goal. and I adjusted as I moved along, and everything else changed along the way too. So the marketing and the ideas I had planned in November had to change to something different because I certainly couldn't use the marketing to promote it for Christmas gifts in April, if you will. So I'm a big believer in research maps, and I'm going to show you an example in the handouts that are available for a download. I have a copy of the research map there. Now, on the screen, it may be a little tough to read. I understand that. But as I indicated, with this webinar, there is a link to download this. If you haven't been able to do that, Scott will make sure that you have this available and know exactly where to find it when we're done. But I like a research map. Matter of fact, I borrowed this with permission from one of my doctoral mentees, and I use this with all my own students, where I actually have them create a map. It's nothing more than a flow chart. It's not creative in any way. It's pretty simple. But I like to have a research map, even when I do my own articles, when I do my own books, whatever I'm going to publish out, because this works for me. I was trained in flow charting, project management, things like that. So, I'm a pretty linear guy, and I like visuals. This does well for me. I can take the ideas out of here. I can build in my own. You may find that having the ability with a diagram could serve a purpose. The saying of, a picture's worth 1,000 words works for me extremely well, and it allows me also, when I'm working with others, to help them get published, to keep them focused on what they need to do at the time. And this becomes nothing more than adding dates to this, and it can become a flow chart, a research map. It could also be the timeline that's built into it. Then I just adjust things as I move along. So planning and achieving the publishing goals, accountability comes into play. If you're publishing something on your own, then that's pretty simple. It's you. And then you have to also decide who else is responsible. If you're going to publish it with a big name publisher, like I did with John Wiley & Sons with my first book. The second book that just came out, I went and did that through a self-publishing company because I had different goals and objectives for that, for the end goal. And I wanted to be able to just do something different than I was able to do before. But still, I had roles, and other people were accountable for my project. Even now, still marketing and getting my content out there to other people is something that other people are accountable for. I may be totally accountable for, but they're at least responsible for certain parts of it. So you might want to look, if you're doing a co-authoring role, are you the lead author? Are you the main author? Are you the contributing author? When I co-author with somebody, if my name's first, I do most of the work, the heavy lifting, if you want to call it that, and the co-author does a little bit less. When I'm the co-author, I'm going to do a little bit less. The roles have changed. If there's 2 or 3 authors, because it's a complex research article, which is common, I'm in the midst of doing an article right now where I'm the 3rd author, and I'll do even less work. But it gets my name on the publication, and I'm okay with that. I don't have to be the first name on everything that I do. I'm okay being a supporting role and helping other people to get published. So another thing I ask people to do is, when you're going for publishing, I understand that many of you have published your dissertation. Some of you who I know personally, I know you've published your own textbooks, or you've published other things, and so you may not need an advisor. I'm a firm believer in collaboration. I'm a firm believer in, as I do in my career field, as I mentor with executives and help them, that the most successful people have coaches and executives, and I'd encourage you to get advisors to help you get published, even if it's just an article, just the help that's around you for free. The people that you know in your network that can either help you proofread, develop your ideas, and give you other insights to expand your thinking. There's a big need for people who have, I'll call it, our collective experience to help others. And so I encourage you to either, one, if you're going to continue to publish and add more of your knowledge base to the world, to seek help, and if you're able to, then help others as well. So the interactive exercise was really designed in this session to take people through developing a strategy and objectives and measuring the goals, the deadline dates, initiatives, the accountability, things we just talked about. If you've downloaded the handout that was available already, then you'll see that there's a couple different pieces or pages in there, if you will. One of them is that research map, and the other 3 pages are what I call my Success Scorecard Tracking System. And I use this in my own work I use this with my mentees that I mentor and coach. I use this for executives, and I use it for companies. Now, I may have to change the tool to a certain degree based on each specific need, but I gave you a couple examples. One example is that I've used for my training is with customer relations processes, real estate, home-based businesses, and personal health. I use these as generic examples so that people can get the ideas, and then I shift them to create their own based on whatever the purpose is. And I also created one for the session that's about getting published. So there's a strategy there about publishing, creating a model, an outline, writing, and the publisher. The one thing I do want to impress upon you, or at least help encourage you a little bit, is to do much like I did with creating a model. Many of you have great insights, and we are no different than some of the people who put out leadership models, organizational models, human behavior models. In some cases, we have far more education and skills and experiences than some of those people did. I mean, come on. Somebody wrote about situational leadership. I mean, it's common sense, but yet somebody made a lot of money off of it, and it's a model that many people can relate to. It's almost kind of seems funny that kind of model is there, but that person was able to transfer a certain amount of information and put it into a model and create a story, if you will, a book, a theory that people could relate to and helps them become a better leader. We can do the same thing. I tried that with my work. I found certain levels of success from it, and I think that's where the creative, innovative aspect and where publishing can be fun, where you take your view of something and put it together in a model. Maybe it becomes a survey later, but it becomes something that you can put out there, and other people can look at it, read it, and say, yeah, I really like that, or, you know, where'd you get that crazy idea? And I get that a lot too, but that's okay. That's part of what can become an academic discourse, and I certainly don't believe everything I've written that everybody should agree with. Matter of fact, some of the things I've written, I went back and read it a couple of years later. I'm wondering, where did I ever get that idea? But that's part of our growth and our process of putting our content and our stuff out there about being published, is taking a chance that we can either help people or maybe we might get some feedback we don't like, but I consider feedback a gift. So I'll get off my soapbox there and get back into this model here, is that the examples here are provided for you that I hope they'll work. The how-to strategies, what works, what appears to be, if you will. I can just say from my experiences, everything that I've done, by the time I got it published, I felt good about it. Sometimes the path to getting it published, of getting it edited and bringing it to full life is challenging. It's not what it appears to be. It's not always easy. It's not always difficult either, but it can be somewhat tedious. The more people involved with it, I can tell you, when you bring in 21 people to write a book, it gets crazy. You got to manage 21 different chapters. Somebody else has to proofread it. Somebody's got to make them all flow together. It's a crazy, insane ride, but it was a good ride. And I believe it served me and other people well. It also served them 21 supplemental authors well, where they were able to get published, co-authored in a book, and that helped them. Some of the things of strategies that I may be able to add on to that I've already spoken about is to really take the time up front and create that plan of what you really want to write. See it, envision it before you start writing about it, and spend considerable amount of time bouncing ideas off colleagues and friends before you get into writing a book. I mean, there's a saying that says, be careful about what you write about. It's more about what people need to read than what you want to write about. So find an opportunity where people will benefit from your work and your ideas more so as you start out. Say, who are you going to serve? And I think that's the primary aspect of much of what us as educators do. We serve others. And if you're going to write and you're going to publish, define who you're going to serve. And to a certain degree, much like those of us who have done dissertation work, who's this going to be significant to? And I would ask, even challenge yourself to, what contribution does this bring to the body of knowledge? In some cases, there's more lofty and more significant implications of our work. For me, when I do some of my books, it's not necessarily, I don't write textbooks. I write books for the average person, the 18 to 26-year-old person who's at the front line and wants to become a frontline supervisor eventually, and maybe the mid-level managers who need to go to the next level. I'm not writing for academics. I'm not writing books for people for me to, become a bestseller. It's nice that that happens, but that's never a goal. And I think if you try to set a goal for it, you want to be a bestseller, that's easy to do, because like Donald Trump and everybody else, on the first day when they go to a bestseller, all you got to do is go out and buy the first 10,000 books yourself from Amazon.com. You'll be a bestseller. That's really all it takes to have on one day or 1 week or 1 month, depending on when you want to be a bestseller at. You can run an ad in USA Today, and you'll find that people probably buy your book all in 1 week. Enough people to make you a bestseller. It doesn't mean the content's any good. So there's other different things to consider when you decide to publish. You know, I got to say that, you know, Walden just goes out of their way in many ways. I believe they do a lot through their Center for Research Quality. And if you haven't been on there, I'd encourage you to go there. There's a lot of resources, and there's even stipends. Many of you probably know that already for being published. So there can be a small stipend in this for you. Could certainly help offset any expenses you may have had. You're not going to get rich off the stipends by no means, but you can do financially well if you decide you want to start doing more publishing with grants. I've been involved with grants from $2,000 to $20,000, and there's other grants out there as well that, you know, through the Gates Foundation and through Google, there's a lot of places out there that give grants in the millions of dollars. Tends to be, of course, for greater levels of research, but that certainly doesn't mean that it's out of reach for many of you with your knowledge and experiences. I've sought the grants before, and they're nice, and I usually about break even by the time I pay for survey use or creative, you know, consultants or somebody to come in and create a cool diagram, something that I can't do. So it's different things out there, but Walden provides a great resource. I encourage you, if you haven't been there in a while, they did change their name about 6 months ago. They changed their name, but the quality is the same, if not better, what's out there, and it's worth going there and kicking the tires. So what I'd like to be able to do now is, you know, we've got plenty of time. I'd like to field any questions. I'm available for support and ideas. I'm willing to help any of you if you're thinking about getting started, you're not sure. If you find my vehicle, the Success Scorecard Tracking System, something that you want to work on and complete or create your own, and that could be of some service to you, and you want to email it to me or create a dialogue, I'm certainly willing to help share whatever experience that I may have with you as well. So Scott, if you're there, well, I know you're there, if you want to open it up for more questions and kind of field them for me, that would be great.
Sure. So as a reminder, just type in your question into the question box if you want to ask that way, or click the raise your hand button and we will unmute your microphone so you can ask your question. Also want to let everyone know over in the questions area, the tool that Richard talked about for research planning, there's a link to the document there if you wish to download that for your use. And give everyone just a moment while you're typing in your questions. Okay, so Cheryl asks, if we participate in research projects external to Walden, do we need to go through any Walden approval processes?
No, not unless you're going to do something that involves Walden itself or any of their students or faculty. But no, if you're doing something completely external and you're publishing and has nothing to do with Walden, you do not have to do that. Matter of fact, I just completed a journal article that, as I mentioned, is going to get published here this month. I put my name at the bottom in my biography, in my little bio, as a contributing faculty to Walden University. So that I can share that into the Walden system. I'll get a stipend for that, but I did not have to do anything with Walden, with Walden's IRB.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that, Rich. Okay, another question came in from Melanie. Do you have a tip for holding our focus over longer projects? The scorecard is helpful, and I wonder how you keep yourself accountable beyond sheer discipline.
Well, that's one thing that really comes easy to me is to be disciplined for whatever reason. I've probably 23 years in the military installed that in me. But what I have found is that with this scorecard is then I break it down to measurable goals and deadline dates into smaller goals. And going back to my incremental gains aspect, much like if you wanted to run a marathon, in the next 12 months, that would be the original goal with the deadline date a year from now. But I would then look and say, okay, 6 months from now, how far should I be running? 3 months from now, how fast should I be running, or how far should I be running? So that I do have short-term goals that build up to the long-term goals, much like organizations do. They have their annual goals, and some organizations have a 2020 goal, 2050 goal. Sure, they're outlandish and they're way out there, but it does give them a goal, and they can start backtracking on things to do this year or in the next couple of quarters. So I find the best way to do is look at the objective. When I decided I wanted to write my book, the last one, I did have an end date, and then I just kind of backed it off and looked at some goals that supported along the way, because I'm a firm believer that when I achieve a goal, I like to celebrate and have fun. I believe in work hard, play hard, and and I got a chapter done, it's like, ooh, let's go, big dinner time, or let's go for a weekend away, or, something like that, to be able to manipulate my own mind more than anything else and help me to make progress. So I would say things like that could certainly help.
Okay. Another thing we want to point out is it sounds like someone else from Walden, when they did research, they were required to go through the IRB process. They did have to complete an application for content analysis of syllabi. No humans were evaluated in contact with the data, but IRB required this. And Elizabeth, could you just write back, was this for your own research or for student research at the university? But I can reach out to, for your own research. And were you using any Walden data? Elizabeth, if you want to just write back one more time.
Or the Walden course material. If you're using Walden course material, that could require it. So I guess it just depends. Or is she, by chance, or are you a full-time faculty or full-time employee?
Elizabeth, if you want, so it sounds like it wasn't Walden data, it wasn't through Walden, it was an analysis at a professional association. I think one last question we just had, Elizabeth, what are you a core faculty or part-time? Okay, but not at the time of the application. You know what I'll offer to do? Let me reach out to the Center for Research Quality and get guidance so we have clarity on that, and I'll email everyone from the group afterwards so that we have clarity on that, because I'm not certain on that either.
Yeah, and it's always good to check. There's nothing wrong with going into the IRB information and find out if you have any concerns. It's always better to be safe than sorry.
Yep. Okay. Melanie, I wrote back to your response. Start small, but don't stay small. It sounds like good advice, she said. Cheryl writes, when you write books, do you refer to the existing research, or are you conducting your own research to inform your writing?
It depends on what the approach is. When I created my first book, I created my own models. I didn't refer to anybody else's. I did do a little referring and citing early on about the problems of employees and the turnover rates of people leaving because of the poor performance of their supervisors. But in that case, I did not. I didn't want to rely on somebody else's work. I believe if you're going to create a model, I don't like the idea of thinking outside the box. I like the idea of getting rid of the box and starting anew. I didn't want to just recreate or extend somebody else's. I wanted to put my own stuff out there. And so I didn't cite other people's work, but I didn't need to either. It's not an academic book. It was never intended to be. Even with my new book, I did research on it of my own, but I didn't go out there and use a lot of citing. I did. In one of my chapters, I do have some grounding information about leading and leadership, but it's a very minuscule amount. I like the idea of writing. I write popular books, as you can tell by the titles. So happens that my first book ended up being used as a textbook in many universities, and that's nice, but it wasn't intended to. So I think it will depend on the content of what you want to write about and what you're putting out there. It's not like a dissertation type of literature review, for writing a book. You don't, there's the difference between academic writing and popular writing. And I certainly don't expect my book or any of my books to be cited in a lot of different things, much like you might find with, maybe, other authors. But if you look at, what's the purpose of what you want to write about, then you decide, what you need to write. I wonder if anybody knows who the quote is on my slide there on the right. If not you, then who? Great American philosopher.
Okay, looks like, Rich, we are all caught up on questions.
Okay, great. I certainly appreciate everybody's time. I hope it was helpful for you. If I can help you in any way, I'm happy to serve. My email's there. You can see it at Walden, and you can find all sorts of information from me online and social media and anything like that. So I'm happy to help.
Great. Someone heard Martin Luther King, great American philosopher, as the guest.
He is a great American philosopher and a great person who's done much, but no, in this case, it's actually Smokey Bear about putting out fires. If not you, then who?
Gotcha. Very good. All right. Well, thank you, Rich, for being our presenter today, sharing the great information and the tools to get started with this. And thank you to everyone who attended. In the questions area, you'll find the link to the feedback survey if you want to go ahead and complete that before you go. As a follow-up, I will send an email that has a link to both the PowerPoint presentation and the tool that Rich referenced in the webinar today, as well as the link to the recording in case you missed anything. I also have sent the question out that we had about IRB approval for faculty research, and when I get a response, I'll include that in the email as well. So thank you all again, and goodbye for now, everyone. This concludes our webinar.
Have a great day. Thank you, Scott.